The little girl's hand was cold as death when Eli touched it. 5 years old, maybe less. Her tiny fingers wrapped around her baby sister like she could protect her from the killing freeze. Their mother lay beneath them both, her body a shield against the cold that was taking them anyway. 3 lives fading in his hayloft on New Year's Eve, 1887. Eli Hawkins hadn't prayed in 7 years, not since he'd buried his wife and daughter in the frozen ground. But kneeling in that hay, he whispered the only word that mattered. Please. If you want to follow this story to the very end, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Now, let's continue. The wind hit like a fist when Eli Hawkins pushed open the barn door. His lantern swung wild, throwing shadows across the frozen walls. He'd made this walk every night for 7 years. Check the horses, secure the gates, walk back to an empty cabin. Same routine, same silence, same nothing. But tonight, something was wrong. The barn door had been open. Not much, just a crack. But Eli had closed it himself at sunset. He remembered the weight of it, the way the latch clicked into place. Easy now, he murmured to his horse, who stamped and snorted in her stall. What's got you spooked? Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Weak, barely there, like a kitten mewling in the cold. No, not a kitten. A child. Eli's heart slammed against his ribs. He raised the lantern, followed the sound. The hayloft. Something was in the hayloft. He climbed the ladder fast, the old wood groaning under his boots. The cry came again, thin and desperate. At the top, he swung the lantern wide. What he saw stopped his breath. A woman lay curled in the loose hay. Young, maybe mid-20s, her body wrapped around 2 children. A little girl, maybe 5, clung to her mother's dress with one hand and held a smaller child against her chest with the other. The baby, no, not a baby, a toddler, maybe 2 or 3, wasn't moving. They were freezing to death in his barn. Jesus, Eli whispered. He dropped to his knees beside them. The woman's lips were blue. Her skin felt like winter itself when he touched her face. But her chest rose and fell, barely, still breathing. The older girl's eyes flew open. She screamed. No! The child scrambled backward, dragging her sister with her. Don't touch us! Don't you touch my mama! Easy, easy. Eli held up his hands, showing them empty. I ain't gonna hurt you. I'm trying to help. That's what they all say. The girl's voice cracked with terror. That's what the man said before he left us, before he took our wagon and left us to die. Eli's jaw tightened. Someone had abandoned them, left a woman and 2 children in the middle of nowhere, in the dead of winter. I ain't that man, he said, keeping his voice low and steady. My name's Eli Hawkins. This is my land, my barn. I found you here, and I'm going to get you warm. But I need you to trust me, just for tonight. Can you do that? The girl stared at him. Her eyes, even in the dim lantern light, were sharp, watchful. The eyes of a child who'd learned too young that the world was cruel. Rosie, she said finally. My name's Rosie. This is Maggie. She won't wake up. Eli looked at the toddler in Rosie's arms. Maggie's face was too white, too still. She's breathing, Eli said, checking quickly. But she's real cold. We gotta get her inside, all of you. Mama won't wake up neither. She will, but not if we stay here. Eli shrugged out of his heavy coat. I'm gonna wrap this around your mama and carry her. Can you hold Maggie real tight and follow me? Rosie hesitated. Then she nodded, once, sharp. Don't drop her, Rosie said. Don't you dare drop my mama. I won't. Eli wrapped the coat around the unconscious woman, then lifted her. She weighed nothing. Too thin, her body burning through whatever reserves it had to keep her children warm. He cradled her against his chest and started down the ladder. Rosie followed, moving careful and slow. Maggie pressed against her shoulder. The toddler's head lolled, but Rosie held on like her life depended on it. Because it did. The walk to the cabin was the longest of Eli's life. The wind cut through his shirt, froze the sweat on his back. His arms burned from the woman's weight. But he didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Inside, the fire had burned to embers. Eli laid the woman on the rug near the hearth, then turned to build up the flames. Kindling first, then split logs. The fire caught, grew, threw heat and golden light across their pale faces. "Bring Maggie here," Eli said. "Close to the fire, not too close." Rosie obeyed, settling on the rug with her sister. Maggie's lips were blue. Her breathing was shallow and fast. "She's real sick," Rosie whispered. "She been coughing for days. Mama tried to keep her warm, but it weren't enough." "How long you been out there? In the cold?" 2 days, maybe 3. I lost count." 2 days, maybe 3. In weather that killed cattle overnight. "You're a brave girl, Rosie." Eli grabbed blankets from his bed, wrapped them around the children. Real brave. Rosie didn't answer. She just held Maggie tighter and watched him with those sharp, suspicious eyes. Eli turned his attention to the mother. Her breathing had steadied some, but she was still too cold. He worked through the night, warming water carefully, applying it to their hands and feet. Slow, careful. Too much heat too fast would be dangerous. Maggie woke first, crying weakly. Rosie tried to soothe her, but the toddler wanted something Rosie couldn't give. "She's hungry," Rosie said, her voice small. "We ain't eaten since... I don't remember." Eli's chest tightened. He went to the kitchen, heated milk, brought it back in a cup. "Can she drink from a cup? She's almost 3. She ain't a baby." Rosie's chin lifted with stubborn pride. "Here, Maggie, drink this." Maggie drank, her small hands wrapping around the warm cup. When it was empty, she looked at Eli with wide, unfocused eyes. "More?" she whispered. "All you want, little one." He brought more milk, bread softened in warm water. Rosie ate too, though she tried to hide her hunger. Her hands shook as she chewed. "When's the last time you ate?" Eli asked. "Mama gave us her food. Said she weren't hungry." Of course she had. That's what mothers did. They starved so their children could eat. Near dawn, the mother stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, dark and confused. Then terror flooded her face. "My girls!" She tried to sit up, couldn't. "Where are my girls?" "Mama!" Rosie scrambled to her side. "Mama, we're here. We're safe." "Rosie?" The woman's hand found her daughter's face, touched it like she couldn't believe it was real. "Maggie?" "She's right here, Mama. The man found us. He brought us inside." The woman's gaze snapped to Eli. Her body went rigid. "Who are you?" Her voice was raw, cracked. "What do you want?" "My name's Eli Hawkins, ma'am. This is my ranch. I found you in my barn, near frozen to death. Just trying to get you warm." "I don't..." She looked around, taking in the cabin, the fire, the blankets wrapped around her children. "I don't understand." "You don't need to understand right now. You just need to rest." "I can't rest. I have to go. We have to keep moving." She tried to stand, collapsed back onto the rug. "Please, if someone's following us, if he finds us here..." "Who's following you?" The woman pressed her lips together. Her eyes, dark and haunted, gave nothing away. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you here," Eli said quietly. I give you my word on that. Your word, she laughed, but there was no humor in it. A man's word ain't worth the breath it takes to speak it. Rosie tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mama, he gave us food. He wrapped us in blankets. He ain't like the others. The woman looked at her daughter, then back at Eli. Something shifted in her face. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the first crack in the wall she'd built. My name is Clara, she said, finally. Clara Brennan. These are my daughters, Rosie and Maggie. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Brennan, though I wish the circumstances were better. It's just Clara. My husband is dead. I'm sorry for your loss. Clara's jaw tightened. Don't be. He wasn't worth mourning. Eli filed that away, said nothing. Maggie began to cough, deep, rattling coughs that shook her small body. Clara pulled her close, rubbed her back, murmured soft words. She needs a doctor, Eli said. There ain't no doctor. There ain't no help. There's just us. There's a doctor in town, Coldwater. About 2 hours' ride. Clara looked up sharply. You'd ride 2 hours in this weather for a stranger's child? Eli met her eyes. I would. Something passed between them. Clara's expression flickered, uncertain. Why? She asked. Why would you do that? Because I couldn't save my own daughter, Eli thought. Because she died in my arms while I begged God for a miracle that never came. But he didn't say that. Instead, he said simply, because it needs doing. Clara stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once. If you can get a doctor, I'd be grateful. Stay by the fire. Keep her warm. I'll be back as soon as I can. Eli pulled on his spare coat, grabbed his hat. At the door, he paused. Rosie. The girl looked up. You take care of your mama and sister while I'm gone. Can you do that? Rosie's chin lifted. I always do. Something in Eli's chest cracked. This child, 5 years old, carrying a weight no child should carry. He'd seen that look before, in the mirror, after his own father died and left him to run the ranch at 16. I know you do, he said quietly. But now you got help. You ain't alone anymore. He stepped out into the frozen dark. The wind hit him like a wall, but Eli didn't hesitate. He saddled his horse, mounted up, and rode for Coldwater. Behind him, the cabin glowed warm against the endless white. 3 lives inside. 3 strangers who'd stumbled into his world on the last night of the year. 3 people who might just save him from drowning in his own silence. The ride to Coldwater was brutal. Wind cut through Eli's clothes, numbed his face, made his horse fight every step. But he pushed on, mile after frozen mile, until the lights of town appeared through the swirling snow. Doc Patterson's house sat at the edge of Main Street. Eli pounded on the door until it swung open. What in God's name? The old doctor squinted through spectacles. Eli Hawkins? I ain't seen you in 6 months. What's wrong? Got a sick child at my place. Toddler, maybe 3 years old. Coughing bad, fever coming on. Her mama and sister are there too. Found 'em in my barn tonight, near frozen through. Doc Patterson was already reaching for his coat. A woman and 2 children? Out in this weather? How'd they end up in your barn? Don't know the full story yet, but the little one needs help. Let me get my bag. 5 minutes later, they were riding back through the storm. Doc Patterson, for all his 60 years, kept pace without complaint. He'd been a field surgeon in the war. A little snow wasn't going to stop him. They reached the cabin as the first gray light of dawn touched the horizon. New Year's Day, 1888. Eli pushed through the door, stamped snow from his boots. Clara, I brought the doctor. Clara stood by the fire, Maggie in her arms. Rosie sat nearby, watching with those sharp eyes. When she saw Doc Patterson, Her face went wary. "It's all right, Rosie," Eli said. "He's here to help." "That's what they always say," Rosie muttered. Doc Patterson approached slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Well now, young lady, you're absolutely right to be cautious. Tell you what, you can stay right there and watch everything I do. Make sure I don't do nothing I shouldn't. Deal?" Rosie considered this. "Deal." The doctor turned to Clara. "Ma'am, may I examine your daughter?" Clara hesitated, then nodded. She laid Maggie on the rug, kept one hand on the child's chest. Maggie whimpered, reached for her mother. "Shh, baby. The doctor's just gonna look at you. Mama's right here." Doc Patterson worked quickly and gently. He listened to Maggie's chest, checked her temperature, examined her throat. His face grew serious. "How long has she been coughing?" 4 days, Clara said. "Maybe 5. Started just before we left the trading post." "And you've been traveling in this weather the whole time?" "We didn't have a choice." Doc Patterson exchanged a look with Eli. Then he reached into his bag, pulled out several bottles and packets. "It's influenza. Bad case, complicated by the cold exposure. But we caught it in time." He handed Clara a small bottle. "This is for the fever. 1 spoonful every 4 hours. And this," he held up a packet of herbs, "you brew into tea. Helps with the cough." "Will she?" Clara's voice broke. "Will she be all right?" "If she stays warm, gets rest, and takes the medicine, yes. She's a fighter, this one. But she can't travel. Not for at least 2 weeks, maybe longer." Clara's face crumpled. 2 weeks. 2 weeks stuck in a stranger's cabin with no money, no resources, nothing but the charity of a man she didn't know. "She can stay here," Eli said before Clara could speak. "All 3 of you. Long as you need." Clara's head snapped up. "We can't impose on you like that." "It ain't an imposition." "You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. I know you're a mother who near killed herself keeping her children alive. I know your daughter is sick and needs rest. That's enough." Doc Patterson smiled slightly. "He's a stubborn one, this Eli Hawkins. Once he makes up his mind, there ain't no changing it. Trust me, I've tried." Clara looked from the doctor to Eli. Her eyes were wet, but she blinked the tears back. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it's New Year's Day," Eli thought. "Because 7 years ago I couldn't save them. Because maybe this is my chance to do something right." But he didn't say any of that. He just shrugged. It's the right thing to do. Doc Patterson stayed through the morning, monitoring Maggie, making sure the fever was under control. When he finally prepared to leave, he pulled Eli aside. "That woman's been through something," he said quietly. "I seen the look in her eyes. The older girl, too. Somebody hurt them, Eli. Maybe not recently, but they're carrying scars." "I figured as much." "You sure you know what you're getting into?" Eli looked across the cabin at Clara, who was singing softly to Maggie, at Rosie, who sat close by, still watching him with those guarded eyes. "No," he admitted, "but that don't change nothing." Doc Patterson clapped him on the shoulder. "Mary would be proud of you. She always said you had too much heart to waste it on being alone." Eli's throat tightened at the mention of his wife. Even after 7 years, her name still hit like a fist. "I'll check back in a few days," the doctor continued. "Keep that little one warm and rested. And Eli?" "Yeah? Happy New Year." Eli almost laughed. "Same to you, Doc." After Patterson left, silence settled over the cabin. Maggie slept, her breathing easier now. Clara sat beside her, exhausted but unwilling to rest. Rosie approached Eli carefully, like he was a wild animal that might startle. "Mister?" "You can call me Eli." "Mr. Eli." She considered this, accepted it. "Are we really going to stay here?" If your mama agrees, yes.
For how long?
Long as you need. Rosie's brow furrowed.
What if we need to stay forever?
The question hung in the air. Eli felt something shift in his chest, like a door creaking open after years of being locked. Then I reckon we'll figure that out when we get there. Rosie studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded.
You ain't like other men, she said. Other men hurt. You don't seem like you'd hurt.
Eli knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. I ain't gonna lie to you, Rosie. This world's got plenty of men who hurt. But I ain't one of them. And while you're under my roof, ain't nobody gonna lay a hand on you, or your mama, or your sister. You got my word on that.
Your word,
Rosie repeated, testing the weight of it. My word. Something in her face softened. Not trust. Not yet. But the first crack in the armor she'd built around her small, battered heart.
Okay,
she said quietly.
Okay, Mr. Eli.
Clara had been watching the exchange. When Eli looked up, her eyes were wet again.
Thank you,
she whispered,
for talking to her like a person. Most folks treat her like she's invisible.
She ain't invisible. She's brave, maybe the bravest person I ever met. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting back tears. Eli looked away, gave her privacy. He understood. Sometimes kindness was harder to bear than cruelty. Outside, the sun rose higher, painting the snow gold and pink. The storm had passed. The new year had begun. And in a cabin on the edge of nowhere, 4 wounded souls had been thrown together by chance, by fate, by the simple accident of a barn door left ajar. Eli didn't know what came next. Didn't know if Clara would stay or flee. Didn't know if he could open his heart again after keeping it locked away for so long. But as he watched Rosie curl up beside her mother, as he heard Maggie's soft breathing in the warmth of the fire, he felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years. Hope. Fragile. Terrifying. But there. He added another log to the fire, settled into his chair, and kept watch through the long morning. Outside, the world was cold and white and empty. Inside, warmth held. And for the first time since he'd buried his wife and daughter beneath the cottonwood tree, Eli Hawkins didn't feel completely alone. 3 days passed. Maggie's fever broke on the 2nd morning, and by the 3rd, she was sitting up, demanding food with the stubborn insistence of a child who'd been denied too long. Clara wept with relief, though she tried to hide it. Rosie just held her sister's hand and whispered, I told you she'd be okay. I told you. Eli kept his distance. He cooked meals, tended the fire, checked on the stock. He gave Clara and her daughters space to heal, to breathe, to exist without a man hovering over them. He'd seen the way Clara flinched when he moved too fast, the way Rosie positioned herself between him and her mother whenever he entered the room. They'd been hurt before. He wasn't going to add to that. On the 4th morning, Clara appeared at the kitchen stove while Eli was making coffee. Let me, she said quietly. Eli stepped back without argument. Clara moved into the space he'd vacated, her hands already reaching for the pan. You don't have to earn your keep, Eli said. You're guests. We ain't guests, we're charity. Clara cracked eggs into the pan with practiced efficiency. And I don't take charity without giving something back. It ain't in my nature. Eli watched her work. Her movements were quick, competent, the movements of a woman who'd spent years cooking for others. But there was tension in her shoulders, a wariness that never quite left her eyes. Fair enough, he said. But if you're cooking, you're eating too, properly, not giving your portion to the girls. Clara's hand stilled on the spatula. Rosie told you. She's worried about you. Says you've been giving them your food since you left the trading post.
They needed it more than I did.
You near died in my bond, Clara. You need food as much as they do." Clara was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded, once.
All right.
They ate together, the four of them, around Eli's rough wooden table. Maggie sat in Clara's lap, still too weak to sit alone, but strong enough to demand bites of egg and bread. Rosie ate carefully, watching Eli over every mouthful.
"This is good,"
Rosie said finally, her voice grudging.
"Better than Mama's. Rosie May Brennan."
Clara's tone carried warning.
"What? It's true."
Eli bit back a smile. "Your Mama's been too tired to cook proper. Give her a few days, she'll put me to shame." Rosie considered this.
"Maybe."
After breakfast, Eli went to check the horses. When he returned, Clara was washing dishes in the basin, her back to him. She didn't turn around when he entered. "There's something I need to tell you," she said quietly. "About why we're here, why someone might be looking for us." Eli hung his coat by the door, waited. "My husband, Thomas." Clara's voice was flat, controlled. "He wasn't a good man. I thought he was when I married him. He was kind at first, gentle. But after Rosie was born, something changed. He started drinking, started failing at business, and when he failed, he needed someone to blame." Her hands stilled in the water. "He hit me the first time, when Rosie was 2. I told myself it was an accident, that he didn't mean it. That's what women tell themselves, ain't it? That if we just try harder, if we just do better, it'll stop." She laughed bitterly. "It never stops." "Clara, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You took us in. You deserve to know what you took in." She turned to face him, her eyes dry but haunted. "Thomas died 18 months ago. Horse threw him. Broke his neck. I was supposed to mourn him. Instead, I felt relief. What kind of woman feels relief when her husband dies?" "The kind who's been hurt too long," Eli said quietly. Clara's breath caught. She looked at him like she'd never seen him before. "After he died," she continued, her voice steadier now, "I found out about the debts. Thomas owed money to everyone in town, money we didn't have. The creditors took everything, the house, the furniture, even my mother's china. We had nothing left." "So you decided to head west?" "I had a sister in Oregon. Had. She wrote me last year, said there was room for us if we could get there. So I joined a wagon train in Kansas, used the last of our money for passage." Clara's jaw tightened. "We made it to Wyoming before Maggie got sick. The wagon master said we were slowing them down. Said they couldn't wait for a sick child. They left you. At a trading post 20 miles from here. Promised someone else would come through. Someone who could take us the rest of the way." Clara's voice cracked. "No one came. We waited 3 weeks. When I couldn't pay for our room anymore, the owner said we had to leave. So we walked. In the middle of winter, with a sick baby. I didn't have a choice, Eli. I didn't have anywhere else to go." Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed to the stove, poured 2 cups of coffee, handed one to Clara. "You said someone might be looking for you." Clara wrapped her hands around the cup, let the warmth seep into her fingers. "Thomas had a brother, Silas. He's convinced Thomas hid money somewhere before he died. Money that rightfully belongs to him, he says. He came to the house after the funeral, tore through everything looking for it. When he didn't find anything, he—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "He hurt you." "He hurt Rosie." Clara's voice went cold. Grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises. Said if I didn't tell him where the money was, he'd do worse. Her eyes met Eli's. "There is no money. Thomas drank and gambled every penny we ever had. But Silas don't believe that. He thinks I'm hiding it. Is he the one who's following you? I don't know. I thought I saw him in Laramie before we joined the wagon train, but I can't be sure. Maybe I'm just jumping at shadows. She set down the cup, her hands shaking. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought this trouble to your door. As soon as Maggie's strong enough, we'll leave. And go where? Clara didn't answer, because there was no answer. She had no money, no wagon, no provisions. The passes were snowed shut until spring. She had nowhere to go and no way to get there. You'll stay here, Eli said. Through winter, at least, until the passes open. I can't ask that of you. You ain't asking. I'm offering. Eli met her eyes. No strings, Clara. No expectations. Just a warm place to rest until you figure out what comes next. Clara stared at him for a long moment. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the trap, the hidden motive. She'd spent years learning to read men's faces, to anticipate the blow before it came. She found nothing but quiet sincerity. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this? Eli looked away, toward the window where snow was falling again. Because somebody should have done it for you a long time ago, and nobody did. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and this time she didn't try to hide them. Thank you, she managed. Thank you, Eli. He just nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude. Drink your coffee before it gets cold. The days took on a rhythm after that. Clara insisted on cooking and cleaning, working with a fierce determination that Eli recognized. She needed to contribute, needed to feel useful. So he let her. Rosie remained wary, but she was watching, always watching. Eli felt her eyes on him when he fed the horses, when he chopped wood, when he sat by the fire in the evening reading one of his few books. She was studying him, he realized, testing him, waiting to see if he'd prove himself a monster like the other men she'd known. Eli didn't try to win her over. He just did what he always did. Worked hard, spoke little, treated everyone in his house with respect. If that wasn't enough for Rosie, nothing would be. Maggie, on the other hand, had no such reservations. By the end of the first week, she was following Eli around the cabin like a small, curious shadow. "What you doing?" she asked, tugging at his sleeve while he repaired a broken chair. "Fixing this leg. See how it wobbles? I'm making it steady again." "Can I help?" Eli looked at her small hands, then at the hammer. "You can hold the nails for me, but don't put them in your mouth." "I'm not a baby," Maggie said indignantly. "Babies put things in their mouths." "I'm 3. Almost 3, Rosie corrected from across the room. "Close enough," Maggie shot back. Eli hid a smile. "You're right. My mistake." Maggie beamed at him. "Mr. Eli, do you got any little girls?" The question hit like a fist. Eli's hand stilled on the wood. "I did," he said quietly. "Once." "Where'd she go?" "Maggie," Clara's voice was sharp, "that ain't a polite question." "It's all right." Eli forced his hands to move, to keep working. "She went to heaven, Maggie. A long time ago." "Oh." Maggie considered this, with the matter-of-fact acceptance of very young children. "Was she nice?" "She was the nicest person I ever knew." "What was her name?" "Lily." "That's pretty." Maggie patted his arm. "I bet she was pretty, too." Eli's throat tightened. She was. Clara caught his eye across the room. Her expression was soft with understanding. She knew loss. She recognized it in others. That night, after the girls were asleep, Clara found Eli on the porch. He was standing in the cold, staring up at the stars like he was looking for answers. "You don't have to talk about it," she said softly. "I know how it feels. The questions that cut too deep." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice rough. Her name was Martha, my wife. We built this place together, her and me. Claimed the land, raised the walls, planted the garden. He paused. She got pregnant the year after we finished the cabin. We were so happy. Built the nursery, sewed the clothes, picked out names. Everything was perfect. Clara waited, not speaking. She went into labor early, middle of winter, just like now. I rode for the doctor, but there was a storm. By the time I got back, his voice broke. By the time I got back, it was over. Martha was gone. Lily lived for 3 hours, just long enough for me to hold her, to see her eyes open and close again.
Eli.
I buried them together, under the cottonwood tree out back. He finally turned to look at her. His eyes were dry, but the pain in them was bottomless. That was 7 years ago. I ain't let anyone in since. Ain't wanted to. Because caring means losing, and I couldn't survive losing again. Clara stepped closer. Her hand found his in the darkness.
I understand, she said quietly. I do. But Eli, you didn't lose them because you loved them. You lost them because life is cruel and unfair. Closing yourself off don't protect you from pain. It just means you suffer alone.
Speaking from experience?
Yes.
Her grip tightened on his hand.
I spent years being afraid. Afraid to leave Thomas, afraid to stay, afraid of my own shadow. But fear don't keep you safe. It just keeps you small.
They stood together in the cold, two wounded people holding on to each other in the darkness. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The next morning, Eli found Rosie standing in front of the closed door at the end of the hall. The nursery door. He'd kept it shut for 7 years, hadn't been able to face what was inside. "What's in there?" Rosie asked without turning around. Eli's heart clenched. "Nothing important."
Mama said you had a little girl. Is this her room?
"Rosie."
I ain't gonna touch nothing.
Rosie turned to face him. Her eyes, so guarded usually, held something like compassion.
I just wanted to know.
Eli stood there, frozen. He could feel the weight of the closed door, the memories locked behind it. Martha's rocking chair, Lily's cradle, the tiny clothes they'd never gotten to use. "Yes," he said finally. "It was her room. It was supposed to be her room." Rosie nodded slowly.
My daddy had a room like that. A room where he kept all his bottles. Mama never let us go in there. She said some rooms hold too much pain to open.
"Your mama's a wise woman."
Are you ever going to open it?
The question hung in the air. Eli looked at the door, at the brass handle he hadn't touched in 7 years.
I don't know,
he admitted. Maybe someday. Rosie studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She reached out and touched his hand, just briefly, before pulling back.
When you do, she said quietly, maybe it won't hurt so much. If somebody's there with you.
She walked away, leaving Eli standing alone in the hallway. His hand tingled where she'd touched it. Such a small gesture. Such a massive gift of trust from a child who trusted no one. He looked at the nursery door. For the first time in 7 years, he thought about opening it. Not today. Not yet. But the thought was there, and that was something. 2 weeks in, the doctor returned to check on Maggie. He pronounced her fully recovered, marveling at how quickly she'd bounced back. "Children are resilient," Doc Patterson said, packing up his bag. "More resilient than we give them credit for."
Thank you, Doctor.
Clara's voice was thick with gratitude.
I don't know how I can ever repay you.
No payment necessary, ma'am. Eli's already settled the account. Clara's head snapped toward Eli. You paid? It was nothing. It wasn't nothing. Medicine, house calls, your time, it all costs money. Money I can't pay back. Ain't asking you to pay it back. Clara's eyes flashed. I don't take charity. Good thing this ain't charity, then. Eli met her gaze steadily. This is a man helping a woman who needs it. Nothing more, nothing less. But, Clara, Doc Patterson interrupted gently, let it go. Trust me when I say Eli Hawkins is the most stubborn man in Wyoming territory. You won't win this argument. Clara looked between them, frustration and gratitude warring on her face. Finally, she let out a breath. Fine, but I'm going to find a way to repay you. Somehow. You already are, Eli said quietly. This cabin's cleaner than it's been in 7 years. Rosie's been helping me with the horses. Maggie makes me laugh. That's payment enough. Clara's expression softened. She didn't argue further. After the doctor left, Eli went to the barn to tend the horses. He was brushing down his mare when he heard footsteps behind him. Rosie stood in the doorway, her small form silhouetted against the white snow. Can I come in? She asked. Of course. She approached slowly, watching the horse with wide eyes. She's big. Her name's Bella. She's gentle as a lamb. You want to pet her? Rosie hesitated, then nodded. Eli guided her hand to Bella's nose, showed her how to stroke gently. She's soft, Rosie whispered, and warm. Horses are good company. They don't judge, don't lie. They just are what they are. I like that. Rosie continued petting Bella, her small hand moving in careful strokes. Mr. Eli? Yeah? My daddy used to hit Mama. He hit me once, too. That's why I don't like men much. Eli's chest tightened. He'd suspected as much, but hearing it from her own lips was different. I'm sorry that happened to you, Rosie. No child should ever be hurt like that. Are you going to hit us? No. Eli knelt down to her level, made sure she could see his eyes. Never. Not ever. I give you my word on that, Rosie. And I don't break my word. Rosie searched his face the way she always did, looking for the lie. This time, she seemed to find something different. Okay, she said softly. I believe you. It was the first time she'd said those words, the first crack in the wall she'd built around herself. Eli felt the weight of it, the responsibility. Can I? Rosie hesitated. Can I come see the horses again sometime? Anytime you want. A small smile flickered across her face. The first real smile he'd seen from her. Okay, I'd like that. She turned and ran back toward the cabin, leaving Eli alone with the horses and the strange, unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. Hope. That's what it was. Hope taking root in frozen ground. Dangerous. Fragile, but growing nonetheless. That evening, while the girls slept, Clara sat with Eli by the fire. She'd taken to joining him in the evenings, the two of them sharing comfortable silence while the flames crackled low. Rosie talked to you today, Clara said. In the barn. She did. She told you about Thomas. Some of it. Clara stared into the fire. I should have left him years ago. Should have taken the girls and run the first time he raised his hand to me. But I was scared. Scared of being alone, of having nothing, of not being able to provide for them. She laughed bitterly. And now look at us. We've got nothing anyway. All that fear, and we ended up exactly where I was afraid of ending up. You got your girls, Eli said quietly. They're alive, they're healthy, they love you. That ain't nothing, Clara. That's everything. Clara's eyes glistened. You really believe that? I know it. I'd give anything to have my daughter back. Anything. But she's gone, and I got nothing left of her but memories and a room I can't bear to open. He paused. You still got your girls. You still got a chance. Don't waste it grieving what you lost. Focus on what you've still got. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned over and kissed his cheek, soft and quick. Thank you, Eli, for everything. She stood and went to bed, leaving Eli alone by the dying fire. His cheek burned where her lips had touched. His heart pounded like he'd just run a mile. He was in trouble. Deep trouble. Because for the first time in 7 years, Eli Hawkins was feeling something he'd sworn never to feel again, and it terrified him more than any blizzard ever could. The kiss haunted him. It had been nothing, really, a brush of lips against his cheek, quick and innocent. But Eli couldn't stop thinking about it, couldn't stop feeling the ghost of Clara's touch every time he closed his eyes. He threw himself into work, mended fences that didn't need mending, chopped enough wood to last 3 winters, rode the property lines twice a day, looking for trouble that wasn't there. Anything to keep his hands busy and his mind quiet. It didn't help. Clara noticed, of course. She noticed everything. But she didn't push. Just watched him with those dark, knowing eyes and let him have his distance. 3 weeks after he'd found them in the barn, Eli came in from checking the stock to find Rosie standing in the kitchen with a determined look on her face. I want to learn to ride, she announced. Clara looked up from the bread she was kneading. Rosie, you said when I was bigger I could learn. I'm bigger now. You're 5 years old. Almost 6. And Mr. Eli's got horses. Good horses. Gentle ones. Rosie turned to Eli, her jaw set in that stubborn way he'd come to recognize. Will you teach me? Eli looked at Clara. She met his eyes, something unreadable in her expression. It's your decision, she said quietly. She's been asking since she could talk. Please, Mr. Eli. Rosie clasped her hands together. I'll be real careful. I'll do everything you say. I won't complain, even if I fall off. Eli felt the corner of his mouth twitch. This child, who trusted no one, was asking him for something. Trusting him enough to teach her. All right, he said, but we start slow. No complaints. Rosie's face lit up. It was the first time he'd seen her look like a child instead of a tiny, worried adult. Thank you, Mr. Eli. Thank you. She threw her arms around his waist before she could stop herself. Then she froze, realizing what she'd done. Eli felt her whole body go tense, waiting for... what? Rejection? Anger? Carefully, slowly, he put one hand on her shoulder. You're welcome, Rosie. She looked up at him with wide eyes. Then she smiled, a real smile, and the ice around Eli's heart cracked a little more. The lesson started the next day. Eli brought out Bella, his gentlest mare, and showed Rosie how to approach her. Horses can feel when you're scared, he explained. You gotta be calm, confident. Let her know you ain't a threat. I ain't scared, Rosie said, though her voice trembled slightly. Course you ain't. You're the bravest girl I know. Rosie stood a little taller at that. She reached out and touched Bella's nose, her small hand shaking only slightly. Good, Eli said. Now let's get you in the saddle. He lifted her up, settled her on Bella's back. Rosie gripped the saddle horn with white-knuckled hands, her whole body rigid. Breathe, Eli said. You're doing fine. What if I fall? Then you get back up. That's what riding is, falling and getting back up. Rosie looked down at him, something shifting in her eyes.
That's what life is too, ain't it?
Eli's throat tightened. This child, this wise, wounded child who understood too much for her years.
Yeah, he said quietly. I reckon it is.
Clara watched from the porch, Maggie in her arms. When Eli glanced her way, she was smiling. Not the guarded smile she usually wore, but something softer, something that made his chest ache. He looked away quickly, focused on Rosie, on the lesson, on anything but the woman who was slowly, inexorably becoming necessary to him. The days grew longer. Rosie's riding improved. She went from terrified to cautious to confident, her small body learning to move with the horse instead of against it. Eli watched her transformation with pride he had no right to feel. She's got a natural seat, he told Clara one evening. Born rider.
She's never been this happy, Clara's voice was soft. Not since before Thomas. Not since before everything went wrong.
She's a good kid, strong, resilient.
She trusts you, Clara turned to face him. Do you understand how rare that is? After what she's been through, after what she's seen, she trusts you. That means something, Eli.
He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Clara stepped closer. It means something to me, too.
Clara, I know.
She held up her hand.
I know you got walls. I know you're scared. God knows I'm scared, too. But Eli, what we've got here, this family we've built, it's real. It matters. And I don't want to lose it because we're both too afraid to admit what's happening.
Eli's heart pounded.
What's happening?
Clara met his eyes.
You know what's happening. You feel it same as I do.
He did know. He did feel it. Every morning when he woke up and heard her humming in the kitchen. Every evening when they sat by the fire and talked about nothing and everything. Every time she laughed. Every time she touched his arm. Every time she looked at him like he was something worth looking at.
I can't, he said, his voice rough. Clara, I can't do this again. I can't love someone and lose them. It near killed me the first time. It will kill me the second.
Who says you're going to lose us? Everyone leaves. Everyone dies. That's how life works. Clara took his hands in hers. Her grip was strong, steady.
Life is also living, Eli. It's taking chances. It's opening your heart even when you know it might get broken.
Her eyes glistened.
I spent years being afraid, years letting fear control everything I did. And you know what I got for it? Nothing but regret. I ain't gonna live like that anymore.
What are you saying?
I'm saying I want to stay. Not just until spring. Not just until we can travel. I want to stay here with you and build something real. If you'll have us.
Eli's chest constricted. Everything he wanted was standing right in front of him. A woman who understood him. Children who needed him. A chance to fill this empty cabin with laughter and life again. And he was terrified. I need time, he managed. I need to think. Something flickered in Clara's eyes. Disappointment, maybe. Or understanding. She nodded slowly.
Take all the time you need.
She released his hands and walked away, leaving Eli alone with his fear and his hope and the unbearable weight of choice. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, while Clara and the girls breathed softly in the other room. Martha's face swam before his eyes, Lily's small body in his arms, the graves beneath the cottonwood tree. But other images came too. Rosie's smile when she finally cantered alone. Maggie's laughter when he swung her in the air. Clara's eyes, warm and steady, looking at him like he was worth something. Could he do it? Could he open his heart again, knowing how much it would hurt if he lost them? The question followed him into troubled sleep. Morning came, gray and cold. Eli rose before dawn, as always, and went to check the horses. He was brushing Bella down when he heard hoofbeats approaching. A rider. Coming fast. Eli's hand moved instinctively to the rifle he kept by the barn door. He watched the approaching figure, tension coiling in his gut. The rider was a man, tall, lean, with a face that might have been handsome if it weren't twisted by greed and malice. He reined up in front of the barn, his eyes scanning the property. "Morning," Eli said, keeping his voice neutral. "Can I help you?" The man smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I'm looking for someone. A woman and 2 little girls. Word at the trading post is they headed this direction about a month back." Eli's blood ran cold, but he kept his face blank, his posture relaxed. "Lot of travelers come through here. What's your business with them?" "Family business." The man swung down from his horse, moved closer. "My name's Silas Brennan. The woman I'm looking for is my brother's widow. She's got something that belongs to me, and I aim to get it back." Silas Brennan, Clara's nightmare, standing in Eli's barn like he had every right to be there. "Don't know anyone by that name," Eli said calmly. "That's so." Silas's eyes narrowed. "Funny thing, I've been tracking them for weeks. They disappeared around here, and nobody in Coldwater knows nothing about them. But smoke's been coming from your chimney day and night. More smoke than one man needs. I like to keep warm." "I'm sure you do." Silas stepped closer, close enough that Eli could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Let me tell you something, friend. I've come a long way for what's mine, and I don't take kindly to folks who get in my way." "That a threat?" "It's a fact." Silas's hand rested on the pistol at his hip. "Now, I'm going to ask you one more time. You seen a woman with 2 little girls? Dark hair, early 20s? Got a look about her like she's scared of her own shadow." Eli met his eyes. "I told you, I don't know anyone by that name." For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Silas laughed, a cold, ugly sound. "All right, have it your way. But I'll be around, friend. I'll be watching. And when I find out you're lying, and I will find out, well..." He mounted his horse, tipped his hat mockingly. "Let's just say, you'll regret it." He spurred his horse and rode off, disappearing into the gray morning. Eli stood frozen, his heart pounding. Then he grabbed his rifle and strode toward the cabin. Clara was at the stove when he burst through the door. She took one look at his face and went pale. "What happened?" "We got trouble." Eli crossed to the window, looked out. "Man came by the barn, name of Silas Brennan. Said he's looking for you." Clara's hand flew to her mouth. The spoon she'd been holding clattered to the floor. "No, no, no, no. How did he find us?" "Don't know, but he's suspicious. He'll be back." "We have to go." Clara's voice rose with panic. "We have to leave, right now, before he..." "Clara." Eli gripped her shoulders, forced her to look at him. "Listen to me. You can't run. Not in the middle of winter, not with the girls. You'd die before you got 20 miles.
"But if he finds us here, if he hurts the girls..."
"He ain't gonna hurt anyone. I won't let him." Clara searched his face, her eyes wild with fear.
"You don't know him, Eli. You don't know what he's capable of. He hurt Rosie once. He'd do worse if he got the chance."
"Then we make sure he don't get the chance." Eli's jaw set hard. "I spent 10 years as a Texas Ranger, Clara. I've faced down outlaws, rustlers, and killers. I ain't afraid of one man with a grudge."
"This ain't your fight."
"Yes, it is. His voice was quiet but fierce. "You're under my roof, you and your girls. That makes it my fight." Clara's breath caught. Tears spilled down her cheeks.
"Why?" she whispered. "Why do you keep protecting us?"
The answer was there, on the tip of his tongue. "Because I love you. Because I can't imagine this cabin without you. Because you and your daughters have given me a reason to live again." But he couldn't say it. Not yet. Not with Silas Brennan circling like a vulture. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said instead. Clara's expression shifted. She heard what he didn't say, understood what he wasn't ready to admit.
"Eli Hawkins," she said softly, "you are the most stubborn man I ever met."
"So I've been told." They stood there, inches apart, while fear and hope and something deeper swirled between them. Then Rosie's voice broke the moment.
"Mama? What's wrong?"
Clara wiped her eyes quickly, turned to face her daughter. Rosie stood in the doorway, Maggie clutching her hand. Both girls looked frightened.
"Nothing, baby. Everything's fine." "You're crying."
Rosie's eyes moved to Eli.
"Did he make you cry?" "No, sweetheart. Mr. Eli didn't do anything wrong."
Rosie didn't look convinced. She stepped forward, positioning herself between Clara and Eli. Protective, defensive. A 5-year-old ready to fight the world for her mother.
"I heard a horse,"
Rosie said.
"Who came?"
Clara and Eli exchanged a look. How much to tell her? How much could a child bear?
"A bad man," Eli said finally. "Someone who wants to hurt your family. But I ain't gonna let him."
Rosie's face went pale, but she didn't cry, didn't scream, just lifted her chin and asked,
"Uncle Silas?"
Clara made a small, wounded sound.
"You remember him? I remember he grabbed my arm. I remember he made you cry."
Rosie's small hands clenched into fists.
"I hate him. Rosie, I do. I hate him and I hope he dies."
Clara knelt down, gathered her daughter in her arms.
"I know, baby. I know you're scared. But Mr. Eli's gonna keep us safe, okay? Promise?"
Rosie looked at Eli over her mother's shoulder. Her eyes, so guarded usually, were filled with fear and desperate hope.
"Promise you won't let him hurt us?"
Eli crossed to them, knelt down to Rosie's level. He took her small hand in his large, calloused one. "I promise," he said. "On my life, Rosie. I won't let anyone hurt you or your mama or Maggie. Not ever." Rosie stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she nodded.
"Okay," she whispered. "I believe you."
The next few days passed in tense vigilance. Eli rode the property twice a day, rifle always close at hand. He saw signs of someone watching, tracks in the snow that didn't belong. But Silas didn't show himself again. Clara kept the girls close, jumping at every sound. The easy rhythm they'd built over the past weeks was shattered, replaced by fear and waiting. But life had to go on. Chores still needed doing. Animals still needed feeding. And Rosie, despite everything, still wanted her riding lessons.
"Please, Mr. Eli?" she asked on the third morning. "I've been practicing in my head. I know I can do better."
Eli looked at Clara, who nodded wearily.
"Let her. She needs something normal."
So they went to the barn, Eli with his rifle slung over his shoulder, Rosie practically vibrating with determination. She mounted Bella without help this time, gathered the reins like he'd taught her. "Good," Eli said. "Now walk her around the paddock. Keep your heels down." Rosie nudged Bella into a walk. Her posture was good, her hands steady. She'd been practicing all right. "Faster?" she asked. "Let's try a trot. Squeeze with your legs, gentle." Bella moved into a trot. Rosie bounced at first, then found the rhythm, posting up and down with the horse's gait. "You're a natural," Eli called. Rosie beamed. For a moment, she wasn't a scared little girl with a monster hunting her. She was just a child, learning something new, feeling the joy of accomplishment. Then everything went wrong. A gunshot cracked through the air. Bella reared, screaming. Rosie flew from the saddle, hit the ground hard, and didn't move. "Rosie!" Eli sprinted toward her, his heart in his throat. Behind him, he heard Clara's scream from the cabin. Another shot. Dirt kicked up inches from his feet. Eli threw himself over Rosie, shielding her body with his own. He looked up, searching for the shooter. Silas Brennan stood at the edge of the trees, rifle raised, a cruel smile on his face. "Found her," Silas called. "Didn't I?" Eli's blood turned to ice. Rosie lay motionless beneath him, her small body terrifyingly still. He couldn't tell if she was breathing. Couldn't tell if the fall had broken her, or if Silas's bullet had found its mark. "Get up slow," Silas called, walking closer. "And don't think about reaching for that rifle. I'll put the next one through your skull." Eli raised his hands, moved carefully off Rosie. His eyes swept over her small form. No blood. Her chest rose and fell. Just knocked unconscious from the fall. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by cold fury. "She's just a child," Eli said, his voice low and dangerous. What kind of man shoots at a child? The kind who's tired of being lied to. Silas stopped 10 feet away, rifle trained on Eli's chest. "I asked you nice. Asked if you'd seen Clara and her brats. You looked me in the eye and lied. So you decided to shoot a 5-year-old? I was aiming at the horse. Wanted to get your attention." Silas's smile widened. "Looks like it worked." Behind them, Clara burst from the cabin, Maggie in her arms. She froze when she saw Silas, her face draining of color. "Well, well." Silas swung the rifle toward her. "There she is, my dear sister-in-law. You've led me on quite a chase, Clara." "Silas, please." Clara's voice shook. "The children—" "Shut up." His voice cracked like a whip. "You know what I want. You've always known. So stop playing games and tell me where Thomas hid the money." "There is no money." "How many times do I have to tell you? Thomas drank everything we had, gambled the rest. There's nothing left." "Liar!" Silas stepped closer, rage twisting his features. "Thomas told me himself. Said he had a fortune stashed away for hard times. Said no one knew about it but him. Thomas was a drunk and a liar. He told you what you wanted to hear so you'd leave him alone." "You're lying." Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. "You've been lying since the day he died. But I'm done being patient. You're going to tell me where that money is, or I'm going to start hurting people until you do." Eli watched him carefully, calculating distances. His rifle lay on the ground, too far to reach. But he still had his pistol at his hip. If he could distract Silas long enough. "Start with me," Eli said, stepping forward. "You want to hurt someone? Start with me." Silas swung the rifle back toward him. "Stay where you are. I ain't got no stake in this fight. No reason to lie for her. If there's money, I don't know nothing about it." "Then why are you protecting her?" "Because that's what decent men do. They protect women and children from cowards who shoot at little girls." Silas's face flushed with anger. "You calling me a coward?" "I'm calling you what you are. A bully. A thug. The kind of man who beats on folks weaker than himself because he ain't got the guts to face someone his own size." "Eli, don't—" Clara's voice was desperate. "You got a lot of nerve, friend." Silas raised the rifle higher. "A lot of nerve for a man with a gun pointed at his heart." "Maybe, but I've faced down worse than you." Eli kept his voice calm, steady. I spent 10 years as a Texas Ranger, hunted outlaws across 3 territories, put more men in the ground than I care to count. You think I'm scared of one man with a rifle and a grudge? Something flickered in Silas's eyes. Doubt, maybe. Or the first stirrings of fear. I don't want trouble with you, Silas said slowly. This ain't your business. You made it my business when you shot at that child, when you threatened a woman under my protection. Eli's voice dropped, cold and hard. So here's how this is gonna go. You're gonna lower that rifle. You're gonna get on your horse. And you're gonna ride out of here and never come back. Or what? Or I'm gonna kill you. The words hung in the air, simple and absolute. Silas stared at Eli, reading the truth in his eyes. This wasn't a bluff. This was a man who had killed before and would kill again if he had to. But Silas wasn't ready to back down. Not yet. You're fast, he said. I can tell. But are you faster than a bullet? Why don't you find out? For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved. Clara clutched Maggie, her breath coming in terrified gasps. Rosie stirred on the ground, moaning softly. And Eli waited, every muscle coiled, ready to draw. Then Silas laughed. You got sand, I'll give you that. He lowered the rifle slightly. All right, Ranger, maybe I was a little hasty. Maybe we can work something out. Nothing to work out. You leave, you live. You stay, you die. See, that's where you're wrong. Silas's smile turned ugly. Because I ain't alone. He whistled, sharp and loud. From the trees behind him, 2 more men emerged, rough-looking, armed. The kind of men who'd kill for money and sleep fine after. Meet my friends, Silas said. They've been helping me track Clara across 3 states. And they don't take kindly to threats. Eli's heart sank, but he kept his face blank. 3 against 1. Bad odds. Worse if he had to protect Clara and the girls at the same time. Impressive, he said calmly. Takes 3 of you to threaten 1 woman and 2 children. Real brave. Mock all you want. You ain't getting out of this. Silas gestured to his men. Grab the woman, and the brats. We're taking them with us. Like hell you are. Eli moved. His hand dropped to his pistol, drew, fired in one smooth motion. The first man went down with a bullet in his shoulder, screaming. The second dove for cover. Silas swung his rifle up, but Eli was already moving, putting himself between the guns and Clara. Get inside, he shouted. Take the girls and get inside. Clara ran. She scooped up Rosie with her free arm, carrying both children toward the cabin. Silas fired after her, missed. Eli fired back, forcing him to duck. You're dead, Silas screamed. You're dead, you hear me? Eli didn't answer. He was already retreating, covering Clara's escape. A bullet whizzed past his ear. Another kicked up snow at his feet. He kept moving, kept firing, until Clara and the girls were inside and he could slam the door behind them. Bar the door, he ordered, reloading with shaking hands. Stay away from the windows. Eli, you're bleeding. He looked down. Blood soaked his left arm, dripping onto the floor. He hadn't even felt the bullet. It's nothing, just a graze. It's not nothing. Clara was already tearing strips from her petticoat. Sit down and let me... No time. Eli moved to the window, peered out through a crack in the shutter. Silas and his remaining man, the one he'd shot was still down, were taking cover behind the barn. They're regrouping, planning their next move. What do we do? We wait. We watch. And when they make a move, we make ours. Rosie stirred in Clara's arms. Her eyes fluttered open, confused and scared. Mama?
What happened? Shh, baby. You fell off the horse, but you're okay now. I heard gunshots. I know. Just stay still, all right? Mr. Eli is going to keep us safe.
Rosie's gaze found Eli. Even dazed, even terrified, she looked at him with something like faith.
Promise?
She whispered. Eli crossed to her, knelt down despite the pain in his arm. He took her small hand in his bloody one. I promise, Rosie. Whatever happens, I ain't letting them hurt you. She nodded slowly, then closed her eyes again. Clara pulled her close, rocking her gently. There has to be another way out, Clara said. A back door, a window.
There's a cellar. Trap door under the kitchen table. Leads to a tunnel that comes out by the creek.
Then we should go, while they're still— No. Eli's voice was hard. I ain't running. This is my land, my home. I won't let men like Silas drive me out.
Eli, please, this isn't worth dying for.
Yes, it is. He turned to face her, and for the first time let her see everything he felt. You're worth dying for. Rosie and Maggie are worth dying for. This life we've built, this family, that's worth everything. Clara's eyes filled with tears.
Eli.
I love you. The words came out rough, desperate. I know I ain't said it. I know I've been too scared to admit it. But I love you, Clara. I've loved you since you woke up in my cabin and told me a man's word ain't worth nothing. I've loved you every day since, and I'll love you till the day I die.
Which might be today, she whispered.
Might be, but if it is, I want you to know. I want you to know that you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. A reason to live, a reason to hope. He cupped her face in his hands. Whatever happens out there, you remember that. You remember I chose this. I chose you. Clara kissed him, not soft and quick like before, but deep and fierce, pouring everything she felt into it. Fear and love and desperate hope all tangled together.
I love you too, she said when they finally broke apart. I love you, Eli Hawkins, and I'm not going to let you die for us. Not today.
Clara, listen to me. Her eyes blazed with sudden determination. There is no money. I told you that, and it's true. But there is something. Something Thomas hid before he died. Eli frowned. What are you talking about? Papers, documents, evidence that Silas has been stealing from half the businesses in Kansas City for years. Thomas was going to use them as leverage, make Silas leave us alone. But he died before he could. She grabbed Eli's hand. That's what Silas really wants, not money. Those papers could put him in prison for the rest of his life. Where are they? Hidden. In my dress. Sewn into the lining. Clara's voice dropped. I wasn't sure I could trust you. I wasn't sure I could trust anyone. So I kept them close, just in case. Eli stared at her. All this time she'd been carrying a weapon that could end this. All this time, she'd been protecting herself the only way she knew how. If we give him the papers, Clara continued, maybe he'll leave. Maybe. No. Eli shook his head. Men like Silas don't leave witnesses. He'll take those papers and kill us anyway. Then what do we do? Before Eli could answer, Silas's voice rang out from outside. Hawkins! I know you're in there. You got two choices. Send out the woman and the kids, and I'll let you live. Or stay inside, and I'll burn you all out. Eli moved to the window. Silas stood in front of the barn, a torch in one hand. His man, the uninjured one, held another. He's bluffing, Clara said desperately. He wouldn't really. He would. Eli's jaw tightened. Man like that, backed into a corner, he'd do anything. You got 1 minute, Silas shouted. Then we light this place up." Eli looked around the cabin, at the walls he built with his own hands, at the memories stored in every corner. Martha's recipe book on the shelf, the cradle in the nursery. Everything he'd held on to for 7 years, everything he'd been too afraid to let go. And then he looked at Clara, at Rosie, pale and scared in her mother's arms, at Maggie, clinging to her sister with wide, terrified eyes. The past or the future, grief or hope, death or life. It wasn't really a choice at all. "I'm going out there," Eli said. "No," Clara grabbed his arm. "They'll kill you." "Maybe, but they'll have to look me in the eye to do it." He pulled his pistol, checked the rounds. 3 shots left. "When I go out, you take the girls through the cellar. Get to the creek, follow it south to town. Tell the sheriff what happened." "I'm not leaving you." "You are. Because those girls need you alive more than they need me dead." He kissed her forehead, gentle and brief. "Go, Clara, please. Let me do this." Clara's face crumpled, but she nodded, because she knew he was right, because she understood sacrifice and love and the terrible math of survival. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Promise me you'll come back." "I'll try." He moved to the door, hand on the latch. Behind him, Clara lifted the trap door, started lowering Maggie into the cellar. "Mr. Eli?" He turned. Rosie stood there, swaying slightly, her face pale but determined. "You're coming back," she said. Not a question, a statement. "You promised you'd keep us safe. You can't do that if you're dead." Eli felt something crack in his chest. This child, this fierce, brave, wounded child who'd finally learned to trust again. He couldn't fail her. He couldn't become another man who made promises he didn't keep. "I'll come back," he said. "I swear it, Rosie. I'll come back." She nodded once, then let her mother guide her toward the cellar. The last thing Eli saw before he stepped outside was Clara's face, white with terror, her eyes locked on his. "I love you," she mouthed. "I love you too," he mouthed back. Then he opened the door and walked into the cold. Silas saw him immediately. Well, well, the hero emerges. "Let's talk." Eli walked forward slowly, hands visible. "Just you and me, man to man." "Nothing to talk about. Where's Clara?" "Gone. Took the girls and ran while you were making speeches." Silas's face contorted with rage. "You're lying." "Check if you want. Cabin's empty." Eli kept walking, closing the distance between them. "But they ain't your concern anymore, Silas. I am." "You think you can take both of us?" "Don't have to take both of you." Eli's voice was calm, steady. "Just have to take you. Your friend there, he's hired muscle, paid to follow orders, not die for nothing. Once you're gone, he'll ride off and never look back." The other man shifted uncomfortably. Silas noticed. "Don't listen to him, Jake. He's trying to get in your head." "I'm telling him the truth." Eli's eyes never left Silas. "You want to die for this man's grudge? For papers that'll put him in prison if they ever see the light of day?" Jake's grip on his torch wavered. "What papers?" "Shut up," Silas snarled. "There ain't no papers. She's been lying this whole time." "Have I?" Eli smiled, cold and hard. "Then why'd you chase her across 3 states? Why'd you beat her daughter? Why'd you burn through money hiring thugs to track down a penniless widow?" He shook his head. "Don't make sense. Unless she's got something you need. Something worth killing for." Jake looked at Silas. Doubt flickered in his eyes. "He's playing you," Silas said desperately. "There ain't nothing—" "There's proof," Eli interrupted. Proof that you've been stealing for years. Proof that'll put you away for life. Thomas was going to use it against you, but he died before he could. Clara's had it all along. That's what you're really after." Silas's face went white, then red, then twisted with homicidal fury. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Eli spread his hands. "Go ahead then. Kill me. Burn the cabin. But Clara's already gone. She's halfway to Coldwater by now. And when she gets there, she's going to hand those papers to the sheriff. Every lawman in the territory will know your name by sundown. You're bluffing. Am I?" Silence. Silas's hands shook. His eyes darted between Eli and Jake, between fury and fear. "I'm done," Jake said suddenly. He dropped his torch, stepped back. "You said this was a simple job. Find a woman, get some money. You didn't say nothing about murder. You didn't say nothing about papers or prison." "Jake!" "I'm out." Jake was already walking toward his horse. "Deal with this yourself." "You coward!" Silas screamed after him. "You spineless, gutless coward!" But Jake didn't stop. He mounted up and rode off without looking back, leaving Silas alone in front of the barn. Eli faced him, one man against one man, just like he'd planned. "It's over, Silas. You can ride out now, disappear before those papers reach the law. Or you can try to kill me and spend the rest of your life running." Silas stared at him. His whole body trembled with rage. The torch shook in his white-knuckled grip. "You ruined everything," he whispered. "Everything." "You ruined yourself. The day you decided to hurt women and children, you sealed your own fate." "I'll kill you," Silas's voice rose. "I'll kill you, and then I'll find her, and I'll make her pay for what she's done." He threw the torch at Eli and went for his gun. Time slowed. Eli saw the torch arcing through the air, saw Silas's hand dropping to his holster, saw the barrel of the pistol swinging up toward his chest. He drew and fired. The bullet caught Silas in the shoulder, spun him around. His gun went off wild, the shot singing past Eli's ear. Eli fired again. Silas staggered, dropped to his knees. The torch landed in the snow and sputtered out. Eli walked forward, pistol trained on the wounded man. Silas looked up at him, blood seeping between his fingers where he clutched his shoulder. "Finish it," Silas gasped. "Go ahead. Finish it." Eli's finger tightened on the trigger. This man had terrorized Clara, had hurt Rosie, had threatened to burn them all alive. He deserved to die. One squeeze of the trigger, and it would all be over. But Clara's voice echoed in his head. "Those girls need you alive more than they need me dead." He wasn't a killer anymore. He was a man with something to live for. Eli lowered the gun. "You ain't worth the bullet." He kicked Silas's pistol away, out of reach. "Sheriff can deal with you. Let the law decide what you deserve." Silas laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "You're a fool. You should have killed me when you had the chance." "Maybe, but I'm done letting hate and fear make my choices." Eli stepped back, kept the gun ready but not aimed. "I spent 7 years living like a dead man, grieving, hiding, afraid to let anyone in because I couldn't stand the thought of losing again." He looked toward the horizon, where Clara and the girls had fled. "Then they came," he continued quietly. "A woman and 2 children, half frozen in my barn, and they reminded me what it feels like to hope, to love, to want something more than just survival." He turned back to Silas. "So no, I ain't gonna kill you, because I want to be the kind of man they deserve, the kind of man who chooses life over death, every time." Silas spat blood at his feet. "Sentimental fool." Maybe. Eli heard hoofbeats in the distance, multiple riders coming fast. But this sentimental fool is the one still standing. The riders crested the hill. Sheriff Morgan and 4 deputies, drawn by the sound of gunshots. Clara must have made it to town, must have raised the alarm. "Over here," Eli called. "Got a wounded man. He needs a doctor and a jail cell, in that order." The sheriff dismounted, took in the scene with narrowed eyes. "What happened here?" "Long story. Short version, this man tried to kidnap a woman and her children, threatened to burn my cabin, shot at a 5-year-old girl." Morgan's face hardened. "That true?" Silas said nothing, just glared at Eli with pure hatred. "I got witnesses," Eli continued. "The woman's on her way to town right now, and she's got papers that'll prove this man's been stealing for years." The sheriff nodded slowly. "All right, we'll sort it out." He gestured to his deputies. "Get him patched up and put him in a cell. Watch him close." They hauled Silas to his feet, dragged him toward the horses. He twisted around, screaming at Eli. "This ain't over. You hear me? This ain't over." "Yeah, it is." Eli holstered his pistol. "It's been over since the day you decided to pick on people who couldn't fight back. You just didn't know it yet." He watched them ride away, taking Silas with them. Then he turned and looked at his cabin, still standing, unmarked by fire. The graves under the cottonwood tree, undisturbed. The barn where he'd found Clara and the girls just a month ago, quiet now in the winter stillness. His arm throbbed where the bullet had grazed him. His hands shook with the fading rush of adrenaline. But he was alive. They were all alive. And somewhere in Coldwater, Clara was waiting for him. Eli mounted Bella, ignored the pain shooting through his arm, and rode toward town. Toward the woman he loved. Toward the family he'd thought he'd never have again. The sun was setting when he reached Coldwater. Orange and pink painted the sky, turning the snow to fire and gold. He found Clara at the doctor's office, Rosie and Maggie huddled against her on a worn wooden bench. She looked up when he walked in. Her face was streaked with tears, her hair wild from running, but to Eli, she'd never looked more beautiful. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised, didn't I?" She flew into his arms, sobbing against his chest. Eli held her tight, breathed in the scent of her hair, felt her heart pounding against his own. "I thought I'd lost you," she said into his shirt. "When I heard the gunshots, when we were running through that tunnel, I thought..." "Shh," he stroked her hair. "I'm here. I'm right here." "Mr. Eli!" Rosie threw herself at his legs, wrapping her small arms around his thighs. Maggie totted after, demanding to be picked up. Eli scooped her with his good arm, held her against his hip. "You came back," Rosie said, her voice thick with wonder. "You really came back." "Told you I would." "Nobody ever comes back." Rosie's eyes filled with tears. "They always leave. They always break their promises." Eli knelt down, ignoring the pain in his arm, and pulled Rosie into a one-armed hug. "I ain't gonna leave you," he said fiercely. "Not ever. You're my family now, Rosie. You and Maggie and your mama. And I don't abandon family." Rosie buried her face in his shoulder and cried. Not scared tears or desperate tears, but the kind of tears that come when something inside you finally breaks open and lets the light in. Clara knelt beside them, gathered them all into her arms. 4 people, wounded and scared and full of hope, holding on to each other like they'd never let go. "Let's go home," Clara whispered. Eli looked at her, this woman who'd stumbled into his life and changed everything, who'd taught him that love was stronger than fear, that family was worth any risk. "Yeah," he said. "Let's go home." The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Clara sat in front of Eli on Bella's back, Rosie behind them on the saddle, Maggie sleeping in her mother's arms. 4 people on one horse, moving slow through the fading light. Eli's arm throbbed where Doc Patterson had stitched it. The wound wasn't serious, just a graze like he'd said, but it served as a reminder of how close they'd all come to losing everything.
"You're thinking too loud," Clara murmured against his chest.
"Sorry."
"Don't be sorry. Just tell me what's on your mind."
Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I almost lost you today. All 3 of you. And the whole time I was facing down Silas, all I could think about was how much time I wasted being afraid." Clara tilted her head back to look at him.
"You weren't afraid today."
"I was terrified. But I was more terrified of losing you than I was of dying." He tightened his arm around her. "That's when I knew."
"Knew what?"
"That I'm done hiding. Done running from feelings because they might hurt someday. I spent 7 years protecting myself from pain, and all I got was a different kind of pain. Loneliness. Emptiness. That ain't living, Clara. That's just existing." Clara's hand found his, laced their fingers together.
"So what are you saying?"
"I'm saying I want to live. Really live. With you and the girls. Whatever that looks like, whatever it takes, I want to build something real."
"Even if it might break your heart?"
"Even then." Eli pressed his lips to her hair. "Some things are worth the risk." They reached the cabin as the last light faded from the sky. Everything looked the same, untouched by the violence that had erupted just hours before. The barn stood solid. The cottonwood tree spread its bare branches against the stars. Home, waiting for them. Eli helped Clara down, then Rosie. The little girl stood in the snow, looking around with wondering eyes.
"We're back,"
she said softly.
"We're really back."
"We're home," Clara corrected gently.
"This is home now."
Rosie looked up at Eli.
"For real? We can stay?"
"For real." Eli crouched down to her level. "This is your home, Rosie. Yours and Maggie's and your mama's. For as long as you want it."
"What about forever?"
Rosie's voice was small but fierce.
"Can we stay forever?"
Eli's throat tightened. He looked at Clara, saw the tears glistening in her eyes. "Yeah," he said roughly. "Forever sounds about right." Rosie threw her arms around his neck. Eli held her close. This child who'd taught him how to hope again, and felt the last of his walls crumble to dust. They went inside. Eli built up the fire while Clara settled Maggie in the nursery, the room he'd kept locked for 7 years, now open and waiting. Rosie helped, carrying blankets and pillows with the serious dedication of a child who finally had a purpose. When the girls were asleep, Clara found Eli standing by the window, looking out at the darkness.
"What are you thinking about?" she asked.
"Martha." He didn't turn around. "And Lily. I've been thinking about them a lot lately." Clara moved to stand beside him.
"Tell me about them."
Martha she was sunshine. Everything I wasn't. She could walk into a room and light it up just by being there. She made me laugh, made me believe in things I'd given up on. He paused. Lily, I only knew her for 3 hours. But in those 3 hours, I loved her more than I thought it was possible to love anything. I wish I could have met them. They would have liked you. Eli finally turned to face her. Martha always said I had too much heart to waste on being alone. She would have wanted this, would have wanted me to find someone to share that heart with. Clara reached up, touched his face. You found us. No, you found me. He covered her hand with his. Stumbled into my barn half dead on New Year's Eve and turned my whole world upside down.
Are you complaining? Never. He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her. I got a question for you, Clara, and I need you to answer honest. Anything. When spring comes, when the passes open and you could travel again, what do you want to do? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I want to stay, but only if you want us to stay, not out of obligation or charity or any of that. I want to stay because you want us here, because this is where we belong. It is where you belong. Eli pulled back, looked into her eyes.
You and Rosie and Maggie. This is your home. I want to make it official. What do you mean? Eli took a breath. This was it, the moment he'd been building toward since the night he found them in the barn. Clara Brennan, I ain't got much to offer. A cabin in the middle of nowhere, a few head of cattle, and a heart that's been broken and mended so many times it probably don't work right anymore. He took her hands in his. But everything I got, everything I am, I want to share with you. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Clara's breath caught. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Eli, I know it's fast. I know we ain't known each other long. But I also know that some things don't need time to be true. I love you. I love your girls. I want to be their father, legally, before God and the law. I want to spend whatever years I got left building a life with you. Yes. Clara's voice broke on the word. Yes, Eli. Yes to all of it. She kissed him then, fierce and tender all at once. Eli held her tight, poured everything he felt into that kiss. All the love and fear and desperate hope that had been building since the moment he first saw her lying in his hayloft. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. I need to tell the girls, Clara said, wiping her eyes. They should hear it from us. In the morning, let them sleep. They've been through enough today. Clara nodded. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. I never thought I'd feel this way again, she said softly. After Thomas, after everything, I thought that part of me was dead, closed off forever. Me too. But you woke it up. You showed me that not all men are monsters, that some of them are good and kind and worth trusting. She looked up at him. You saved us, Eli. Not just from the cold, not just from Silas. You saved us from giving up on everything. You saved me right back. Eli kissed her forehead. Now come on. It's been a long day. We both need rest. They slept that night curled together on the narrow bed, Clara's head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her. For the first time in 7 years, Eli slept without nightmares. Morning came bright and cold. Eli woke to the sound of giggling from the kitchen. He dressed quickly, followed the sound. Rosie and Maggie sat at the table while Clara made breakfast. Maggie was drawing something on a piece of paper. Rosie was watching her mother with a strange, knowing expression. Mr. Eli! Maggie scrambled down from her chair and ran to him. I drawed a picture. She thrust the paper at him. It showed 4 stick figures standing in front of a house. 2 big ones and 2 small ones. A family. That's beautiful, Maggie. Eli's voice was thick. It's us. Maggie pointed at each figure. That's Mama, and that's me, and that's Rosie, and that's you. Eli ain't our daddy, Rosie said quietly. You can't put him in a family picture. Why not? Maggie's lower lip trembled. He lives here. He's part of our family. Rosie opened her mouth to argue, but Eli held up his hand. Actually, Rosie, there's something your mama and I need to tell you. He sat down at the table, pulled Maggie into his lap. Clara came to stand beside him, her hand on his shoulder. I asked your mama to marry me last night, Eli said. And she said yes. Rosie's eyes went wide.
You're going to be our daddy?
If you'll have me. For a long moment, Rosie didn't move, didn't speak. Eli's heart pounded. What if she said no? What if too much damage had been done for her to accept another man into her life? Then Rosie launched herself at him, nearly knocking Maggie off his lap. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on like she'd never let go.
Yes, she whispered fiercely. Yes, I'll have you. I'll have you forever.
Eli held both girls close, tears streaming down his face. Clara knelt beside them, gathered them all into her arms. 4 people, broken and mended, becoming one family.
When's the wedding?
Rosie asked, pulling back. Do I get to wear a pretty dress?
Can Maggie be in it too?
Course you can, Clara laughed through her tears. You'll both be there, standing right beside us.
When?
Rosie demanded.
When is it?
Eli looked at Clara. Soon as the circuit preacher comes through. Could be a week, could be a month.
I hope it's soon,
Maggie said seriously.
I want Mr. Eli to be our daddy for a long, long time.
Me too, sweetheart. Eli kissed the top of her head. Me too. The preacher came 2 weeks later. He arrived on a cold February morning, his horse steaming in the winter air. Eli had sent word through the general store, and Reverend Thomas had made the journey despite the weather. Been a long time since I married someone out here, the preacher said, warming his hands by the fire. Good to see this old cabin full of life again. It's been empty too long, Eli agreed. The ceremony was simple. Clara wore the blue dress she'd sewn from fabric Eli bought in town. Rosie wore her best dress, carefully mended and pressed. Maggie had insisted on wearing ribbons in her hair, yellow ones that matched the winter sun. Doc Patterson served as witness, along with Mrs. Carlson from the general store. She'd been suspicious of Clara at first, but had warmed to her after hearing the full story of Silas and the papers and Eli's stand against violence. You picked a good one, Mrs. Carlson told Eli before the ceremony. That woman's got steel in her spine. She'll do well out here. I know. Eli adjusted his collar nervously. I'm the lucky one. The vows were traditional, spoken in the cabin's main room with the fire crackling warm and the winter light streaming through the windows. Clara's voice was steady. Eli's cracked twice. Neither of them cared. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Reverend Thomas said, smiling. You may kiss your bride. Eli kissed Clara softly, tenderly, aware of their audience. Rosie giggled. Maggie clapped her hands. Now for the other matter, the preacher continued, pulling papers from his satchel. I understand there's an adoption to finalize. Yes, sir. Eli took Clara's hand. I want to legally adopt Rosie and Maggie as my daughters. Reverend Thomas looked at the girls. Do you understand what this means? Eli Hawkins will become your father in the eyes of the law. He'll have all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Rosie nodded solemnly. We understand. And you consent to this? Yes, sir. We want Mr. Eli to be our daddy. She paused. I mean, just Eli. Our Eli. Our Eli, Maggie repeated, beaming. The papers were signed. The Reverend declared it official. And just like that, Eli Hawkins went from being a man alone to being a husband and father. After the preacher and witnesses left, the new family sat together by the fire. Maggie had fallen asleep in Eli's lap. Rosie leaned against Clara, fighting to keep her eyes open. We should put them to bed, Clara said softly. In a minute, Eli looked down at Maggie's sleeping face, at Rosie's drooping eyelids. I just want to remember this. All of us together. A real family. Clara's hand found his. We are a real family. We have been since the beginning. Since I found you in the barn. Since you chose to save us instead of leaving us there. Eli thought about that night. The cold, the snow, the 3 bodies curled together in his hayloft. He'd come so close to missing them. An hour later, 10 minutes later, and they would have been gone. "I didn't choose," he said slowly. "It wasn't a decision I had to make. I saw you there, and helping was the only option. Like breathing." "That's love," Clara said simply. "That's what love does. It makes the right choice feel inevitable." Rosie stirred against her mother. "Mama, can I ask Eli something?" "Of course, sweetheart." The little girl sat up, rubbed her eyes. "Eli, can I call you Pa now, since you really are Daddy?" Eli's throat closed up. He had to swallow twice before he could speak. "Yeah, Rosie, you can call me Pa." "Pa." Rosie tested the word, smiled. "I like that. Pa." "Me too," Maggie mumbled, not quite awake. "Pa." Clara was crying again. Eli was pretty sure he was too. He didn't care. "Come on," he said, his voice rough. "Let's get you girls to bed." He carried Maggie to the nursery, the room that had waited so long for children to fill it. Clara followed with Rosie. They tucked both girls into the small bed that had been Lily's, that would have been Lily's, and now belonged to his new daughters. "Good night, Pa." Rosie's eyes were already closing. "Good night, sweetheart." "Pa?" Maggie's voice was drowsy. "Will you be here in the morning?" "I'll be here every morning, I promise." "Good," she smiled, snuggled deeper into the blankets. "I love you, Pa." "I love you too, Maggie, both of you, more than you'll ever know." He stood in the doorway, watching them sleep. Clara slipped her arm through his. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Being a father again?" Eli considered the question. He thought about Lily, about the 3 hours he'd had with her, about the 7 years of grief that followed. He thought about Rosie and Maggie, about the weeks they'd been together, about the lifetime stretching ahead of them. "It feels like coming home," he said finally. "Like I was lost for a long time, and now I'm found." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "Welcome home, Eli." "Welcome home, Clara." They stood there together, watching their daughters breathe, until the fire burned low and the night wrapped around them like a blessing. Spring came slowly that year. The snow retreated inch by inch, revealing brown earth and the first tentative shoots of green. The creek thawed, birds returned. Life stirred after the long winter sleep. Eli taught Rosie to ride properly. Not just walking, but trotting, cantering, even a few short gallops across the open meadow. She took to it like she'd been born in the saddle, her small body moving in perfect rhythm with the horse. "She's a natural," Doc Patterson said during one of his visits. "Might have a future as a horsewoman." "She's got a future as whatever she wants to be," Eli replied. "That's what matters." Maggie, not to be outdone, insisted on learning too. She was too small for the saddle yet, so Eli let her sit in front of him while he rode, her small hands on the reins, pretending to steer. "I'm a cowgirl," she shrieked with delight. "Look, Mama, I'm a cowgirl." Clara watched from the porch, laughing. Her belly was just beginning to swell with new life. Another miracle neither of them had expected. "You sure?" Eli had asked when she told him, his voice shaking. "I'm sure." Clara took his hands, placed them on her stomach. "The doctor confirmed it this morning. But after Lily, after everything, I thought so too. But life surprises us, Eli. It breaks us and heals us and surprises us in ways we never expect." Another baby. Another chance. Eli had cried that night, harder than he'd cried in 7 years, letting go of grief he didn't know he still carried. One evening in late April, Clara found him standing by the cottonwood tree. Martha and Lily's graves were decorated with fresh wildflowers, the first of the season.
"You still visit them?" she said softly. "Every week."
Eli didn't turn around. "I promised I'd never forget."
"I wouldn't want you to forget."
Clara came to stand beside him.
"They were part of your life, part of who you are. I don't need you to erase them to love me."
"I know." He finally looked at her. "But I needed to tell them. About you, about the girls, about the baby. I needed them to know I'm happy again."
"Are you? Happy?"
Eli thought about the question. He thought about the cabin that no longer felt empty, about the sound of children laughing in rooms that had been silent for years, about Clara's smile, Rosie's determination, Maggie's joy, about the life growing in his wife's womb, a gift he'd never expected. "Yeah," he said, "I'm happy. Happier than I ever thought I'd be again." Clara slipped her hand into his. Together, they looked at the graves, at the names carved into the simple wooden crosses.
"Thank you," Clara said quietly, "for sharing him with us."
For a moment, Eli could have sworn he heard Martha's voice on the wind, warm and laughing, the way she'd always laughed. "Take care of him," the voice seemed to say. "He's stubborn, but he's worth it."
"I will,"
Clara whispered, as if she'd heard it too.
"I promise."
They walked back to the cabin hand in hand. Rosie and Maggie were playing in the yard, chasing each other in circles while the evening sun painted everything gold.
"Pa!"
Rosie called when she saw them.
"Watch what I can do."
She turned a cartwheel, landed wobbly but upright. Maggie tried to copy her and tumbled into the grass, giggling. "Very impressive," Eli called back. "But don't wear yourselves out. Supper soon."
5 more minutes?"
Rosie begged. 5 more minutes. Clara leaned against him as they watched their daughters play.
"You know," she said, "I used to dream about this. When Thomas was at his worst, when I couldn't see any way out, I'd close my eyes and imagine a place where we were safe. A place where someone loved us. A place where we belonged."
"And?"
"This is it." Her voice was thick with emotion. "This is exactly what I dreamed. Right down to the sunset and the laughter and the man standing beside me."
Eli pulled her close. "I never dreamed this. I'd given up on dreaming. But when I found you in that barn, something woke up in me. Something that had been sleeping so long, I thought it was dead."
"What was it?"
"Hope," he said simply. "You gave me hope, Clara, and I don't ever intend to let it go." The sun sank lower. The girls came running, breathless and happy, ready for supper. The family went inside together, and the door closed against the gathering dusk. 6 months later, on a golden September morning, a son was born in the cabin on the Wyoming plain. They named him Thomas Lily Hawkins, a name that honored both the past and the promise of the future. Rosie held her baby brother with careful reverence.
"He's so small."
"You were that small once," Clara said, exhausted but radiant.
"Was I?"
Rosie looked skeptical.
"I don't remember being that small."
"None of us remember," Eli said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "But we all start small. Then we grow." Maggie peered at the baby with intense curiosity.
"When can he play with us?"
"Not for a while, sweetheart. He's got to learn to walk and talk first."
"I can teach him!"
Maggie bounced with excitement.
"I can teach him everything."
"I'm sure you will." Clara smiled at her daughters. "You're going to be the best big sisters in the whole world." That night, after the girls were asleep and the baby was settled in the cradle that had waited so long for purpose, Eli sat with Clara by the fire. "Thank you," he said quietly,
For what?
For not giving up. For walking into my barn on the coldest night of the year. For believing that life could be better. He took her hand. For giving me a family. Clara's eyes glistened. Thank you for letting us in. I know it wasn't easy. I know you were scared. I was terrified. Still am sometimes. But the terror don't matter as much as the love. That's what I learned. Fear fades. Love stays.
Love stays, Clara repeated softly. I like that.
They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the fire crackle and the wind whisper outside. In the nursery, the baby slept peacefully. In the room beyond, Rosie and Maggie dreamed of horses and sunshine and a father who kept his promises.
You know what my mother used to say? Clara asked after a while. What? She said that God writes stories with our lives, that every hardship is a chapter, every joy is a verse, and we don't get to know the ending until we get there.
She looked at him. I used to think my story was a tragedy, a woman who made bad choices and paid for them. But now I think it was something else.
What?
A love story, Clara smiled. A love story that just took a long time to find its hero. Eli's throat tightened. I ain't a hero.
You are to me, to us. You saved us, Eli Hawkins. Not just from the cold, not just from Silas. You saved us from despair, from giving up. You showed us that good men exist, that second chances are real, that family isn't about blood, but about choice.
You saved me right back, Eli said. Every single day, you save me. He leaned over and kissed her, soft and sweet. I love you, Clara Hawkins.
I love you too, Eli Hawkins. Forever.
And it was true. Through all the years that followed, through hardships and joys, through children growing and seasons changing, through everything life threw at them, one thing remained constant. They loved each other. They chose each other. Every single day. Outside, the stars blazed cold and bright over the Wyoming plain. Inside, warmth held. A family slept peacefully, safe and together, in a cabin that had once held only grief. The long winter was over. Spring had come and stayed and become a lifetime. Eli Hawkins had found them freezing in his barn on New Year's Eve. 3 strangers on the edge of death. He'd carried them through the cold, nursed them back to life, opened his heart when he thought it was closed forever. And they had saved him right back. That was the truth of it, simple and complete. Some families are born, some are made. The best ones are built from broken pieces that somehow fit together, held by love strong enough to heal any wound. This family was made from all of those things, and they would endure.